Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
Hi, this is Adam Farrar with the Wadesville Fire Department, and you're listening to Dr. Richard Gasaway on SA Matters Radio. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want you to see the bad things coming in time to avoid the bad outcomes.
Hello, and welcome to episode 34 of Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from Chicago, Illinois, where I'm teaching a 3-day situational awareness class for suburban fire departments in Cook County. I don't have a guest this week, so I'm going to discuss the long-term impact of the economic downturn of 2008 on fire department staffing and how strategy and tactics should be adjusted for this new normal. Before I jump into the main segment, I want to keep you updated on the progress of the new website launch and some other things happening for the SA Matters community. A month or so ago, I announced that I was working on the new website, along with a premium membership option and along with the relaunch of the online academy and the release of some new online training programs. I'm doing most of the work myself, and my travel schedule, being as it is, has made things move a little slower than I would have wished. I'm excited to share the SA Matters community picked up over 100 new members so far this month, mostly from following a webinar that I did with Firehouse.com on the Situational Awareness Accountability Connection. Thanks to Scott Safety for sponsoring the show, and thanks to Firehouse.com for hosting it, and thank you, the more than 700 people who registered for it. A link to the webinar will be included in the show notes for this episode, so be sure to go over to samatters.com and click on the link for episode 34. I've got some really cool feedback from program attendees over the past 2 weeks, and tomorrow I wrap up a 16-day tour that started in Evansville, Indiana, and finishes in Blue Island, Illinois. More on that a little bit later. I really appreciate the kind comments that I've received on my 2 Twitter feeds. If you're interested in checking out the feedback or jumping into the conversation I'm having about situational awareness there, you can join me on Twitter at Rich Gasaway and at SA Matters. There are almost 13,000 of us connected together there on Twitter on those 2 channels, and I send out messages about situational awareness and my travel antics and angst as well. I've also received some really nice comments on the Facebook page too, so if you want to join me there in that conversation, you can like the SA Matters Facebook page and join the more than 2,000 who are connected with me there. If you want to become part of the SA Matters community, you can head over to the website and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage that says SA Matters Membership. The membership is free, and when you sign up, you receive a special report that I've created called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. So if you're not a member, you can head over to the website and sign up today. It's completely free, and you'll receive my monthly newsletter that addresses situational awareness matters issues. For anyone who is a member, be watching your inbox. In celebration of the 3-year anniversary of SA Matters, I'm going to be sending out some short, I mean under an hour, videos for free that will discuss how we're training firefighters to fail and contain some powerful situational awareness and decision-making lessons. You may want to make sure that you have the support at richgasaway.com on your safe sender list in your email. Otherwise, the email that contains a video link might go to your junk mail folder. And I promise you're going to want to watch these videos and share them with others. And they're completely free, so you don't have to worry about that. So be watching your inbox, and they'll be coming soon. I'd like to take a moment to thank some recent program hosts from the SA Matters live event tour. These events couldn't be possible without the commitment and support of the program hosts. Evansville, Indiana Fire Department host Chief Mike Conley, Scott Township Fire Department, also in Evansville, Indiana, neighboring community, Chief Keith Carr, the Raleigh Fire Department of Raleigh, North Carolina, Chief John McGrath, the Carborough Fire Department of Carborough, North Carolina, Chief Travis Crabtree, the Matthews Fire Department in Matthews, North Carolina, Chief Dennis Green, and the Cook County Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management here in Chicago, and my host, Robert Dunn, the Training and Exercise Coordinator. Upcoming events, you can always check those out on my website by going to samatters.com, clicking Programs and Keynotes, and then Upcoming Events. December 28th, I'll be in Brighton Township Fire Department in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. January 14th, Maple Grove Fire Department in Maple Grove, Minnesota. January 16th, Arvada Fire Department, Arvada, Colorado. January 20th, Castle Rock Fire Department, Castle Rock, Colorado. January 22nd, I'll be doing a webinar on situational awareness for firehouse.com, so you can go over to their website and sign up for that. January 23rd, Minnesota Rural Electric Association, doing a situational awareness program for electrical line crews. That'll be in Rochester, Minnesota. January 26th and 27th, the Firehouse World Conference in San Diego, California, doing 2 programs there, Preparing for the Storm on the Horizon, which is a program talking about how to prepare for when efficiency consultants come knocking on your door and do their magic to try to reduce fire department size and cost, and how to prepare for that. And then I'm doing one on the new training paradigm, talking about how we need to change the way we train firefighters. Then on January 31st, for the Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College, my son Cameron, who is a millennial, he and I are going to be doing a program on Generation Y and millennials and recruitment and retention at their new Richmond campus. So you can go to the Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College website if you're interested in signing up for that. So let's jump into our feature segment where I talk about firefighting. It's a whole new ballgame.
Firefighting. It's a whole new ballgame. There's little doubt the economic recession of 2008-2009 had a significant impact on the nation's fire service. Hardly a day went by where there wasn't some news about an organization that was downsizing, right-sizing, or capsizing. There's all kinds of terms being attached to what happened. One of those terms that I heard at the time was, "This will be our new normal." This term seemed to be fitting as the fire service was facing changes unlike anything most of us had ever experienced, at least in recent times. And it's likely it will stay this way for a long time. Is this a pessimistic view or a realistic view? Many fire service leaders are not confident that fire department budgets or firefighter positions are going to return to their pre-recession levels. If they do return, it may be a very slow process. Thus, the situation many fire departments find themselves in is the new normal, or what some might call a paradigm shift. Joel Barker, credited for being the person who popularized the concept of paradigm shifts in the modern times, shares a story about Swiss watchmakers, renowned crafters of some of the finest timepieces in the world. As the story goes, the person who discovered the digital watch technology first pitched their idea to the Swiss watchmakers, who shunned the inventor's idea, quipping, "Who would ever want a watch that did not have moving parts to ensure the precision?" The dejected inventor, with his head held low, left Switzerland and traveled to Japan to see if anybody there would embrace his digital watch technology. The rest, as they would say, is history. The paradigm for watch wearers changed, and the Swiss watchmakers found themselves in tough times. The paradigm for the fire service has also shifted, and unless ways are found to improvise, adapt, and overcome, there may be consequences. The consequences most concerning are those associated with firefighter safety. The do more with less edict can only go so far. Can fire departments find ways to be more efficient and more effective in response to these trying economic times? In many cases, the answer is yes. When economic times were good and budgets and staffing were increasing at healthy rates, some organizations were able to capitalize on those opportunities and became resource abundant. However, the economy has dealt many communities some tough cards that now require a tightening of the belt, and that has created a call to find new or different ways to provide services. However, there is a limit to how much better an organization can become based on the benefits of becoming more efficient. That point, termed the point of diminishing return for the economist-minded readers, is where each incremental decrease in budget or staffing will result in a corresponding impact on the organization's ability to safely and effectively serve the community. The size and complexity of the organization and the services it provides, coupled with the complexity of the community, means the point of diminishing return can be different for every organization. Depending on these factors, the point of diminishing return may come with a reduction of a single line or staff position. In very large organizations, the point of diminishing return may not come until dozens or more positions are reduced. Whatever the size of the organization, however, the point does come. It is at this point that bad things can begin to happen if the organization does not fundamentally change the way it does business. The safety impacts of a budget or staff reduction cannot be evaluated in a vacuum. There are other forces in play. For example, lightweight construction and hydrocarbon-rich contents are contributing to earlier rates of flashover and earlier building collapses, a significant safety concern for firefighters. There are also growing challenges being faced by fire-based EMS organizations as our aging communities increase the demands for medical services. High-volume demand for EMS services may reduce the number of firefighters available for structure fire response, another significant safety concern for firefighters. The game. Sometimes when looking at an issue, it can be emotionally charged as safety to the community and safety to the firefighters is at stake. In this case, it may be beneficial to use an analogy. The analogy chosen here is to compare a fire department to a baseball team. Granted, the consequences of a bad outcome in baseball, the loss of a game, pales in comparison to the potential consequences of a bad outcome, injury, or loss of life at an emergency scene. But follow the analogy through before passing judgment. On a baseball team, each player fulfills a specific role on the field and performs specific tasks assigned for their position. Each role is so specialized it prohibits the position from being interchangeable. Further, it is impossible for any one player to effectively fill multiple roles on the field at the same time. It is common, however, for two or more players to work in tandem to perform a task or to back each other up. At no time does a baseball team ever operate with less than the prescribed number of players on the field, 9. Hypothetically, Say the team's owner and management had determined that revenues collected were not going to be sufficient to cover the team's expenses. The fiscal shortfall facing the team causes them to address it in essentially two ways: increase revenue or decrease expenses. To increase revenue, the franchise could take several courses of action or combine several simultaneously. The club could increase ticket prices. While this would increase the revenue per ticket, the overall revenue may decrease if less people buy tickets and come to the games. Less attendance may also impact the revenue from concessions and merchandise. The club could increase the price of concessions and merchandise. Again, this may increase revenue per hot dog, but the overall revenue may remain constant or decline if less people buy hot dogs. As with the revenue options, to reduce expenses, the franchise could take several courses of action or combine several simultaneously. The club could cut operating expenses by controlling utility costs or by reducing the quality and subsequently the cost of food, merchandise, and supplies. They could reduce personnel costs with staffing reductions in a variety of areas, including administrative staff, ticket sales, concession workers, merchandise sellers, field maintenance personnel, parking attendants, or reduce the number of baseball players on the team. I want to focus my discussion on the reduction in the number of baseball players. While reductions in other areas bring their own issues, if a team makes significant cuts in the number of players and subsequently begins to lose games, the core purpose of the existence of the organization begins to erode. When a team cuts players, the decision as to which players get cut may be based on contractual obligations. Therefore, it may not be the poorest performing players who are the first to go. Rather, it may be the newest players on the team if, say, the contract says cuts are made in reverse seniority order. If the team cuts players whose performance is marginal, or they cut players who see little field time, the impact may not be so significant. However, what happens when the cuts are so deep that the team can no longer play the game with 9 players on the field? Maybe the team has to take the field with 8 players. Such a short-staffed situation would surely have an impact on the performance of the team. In some fire departments, the cuts have been so significant, the core services that are being provided are done so with less than adequate staffing. The equivalent of a baseball team taking the field with 8 players. This team is not going to be able to perform the same as it did when it had 9 players on the field. The vacant position is going to lead to an impact on team performance. The team is going to have to assess the impact of the loss and determine which position they're going to leave vacant. It's hard to imagine any position on the field that is not vital to the team's success. Arguably, there may be a few positions that are absolutely essential for the team to even be marginally functional. For example, a team without a pitcher would forfeit the game immediately when they took the field. No pitcher, no game. What about a team that had no catcher? If this were the scenario, every pitch thrown would become an opportunity for runners to pass bases with no concern of being picked off by the non-existent catcher. Perhaps the team cuts the first base position. If a ground ball were hit to the infield, there'd be no one at first base to receive the throw, and the runners would most assuredly earn a single. It's easy to see these 3 positions are absolutely essential to team success. All the other positions are up for reduction consideration. It could be argued that on a fire scene, like on a baseball field, Some positions may be more essential than others. For the sake of this analogy, let's say the proverbial field positions, key roles, at a structure fire are command, safety, vent, entry, search, attack, backup, salvage, and overhaul. Isn't it ironic that it's the same number of essential key roles, 9, whether it's for baseball or firefighting? The fact that there are 9 key roles is not saying a fireground can operate with 9 people. Each of the key roles identified above requires a team of players, not one individual. How many players in each essential team role is a subject of much debate. If each role were staffed with just 2 people, which is woefully inadequate for all roles except perhaps command and safety, it would set the bogey at 18 firefighters as a minimum. So which roles on the fireground are the essential ones, tantamount to the pitcher, catcher, and first base position in the baseball example previously mentioned? Again, this could be the basis of much debate, and since it is not the point of this article to identify the positions which are essential and which could be eliminated, hypothetically, the positions of command, search, and attack will be identified as the essential ones. All other positions are subject to reduction consideration. If the baseball team reduced some field positions, it could arguably make adjustments for the losses. The physical expanse of the field does not afford one player the ability to cover 2 geographic positions at the same time. It simply is not possible. However, the infield or the outfield could shift physically to provide coverage for the lost position. The shift, however, would create a hole in the standard line of defense for the baseball team, a hole the opponent would surely identify and quickly exploit to their advantage. This scenario makes it relatively easy to predict the team is going to suffer losses. On the fireground, setting aside the 3 hypothetically essential roles of command, search, and attack, the roles subject to reduction would then be safety, vent, entry, backup, salvage, and overhaul. Reducing staffing for any of these roles creates holes in the fireground operation, the same way that holes are created on the baseball field. Firefighter responsibilities can be shifted to provide coverage for the lost roles. However, as in the baseball example, this shift creates deficiencies in the department's standard line of defense for the firefight, a hole the opponent, in this case the fire, will surely identify and quickly exploit to its advantage. As in baseball, it becomes relatively easy to predict there's going to be losses. To think there will be no impact on the outcome is playing fantasy baseball. On the baseball diamond, when a team loses a game, there is little significance to the overall well-being of the players, the fans, the owners, or the general citizenry. The sense of loss is only temporary because the impact is so minimal in the big picture. However, on the fireground, the significance of a loss can be very substantial to firefighters, the city, the citizens, and the overall community. As a fire department reduces resources, that impacts core services. The opportunity for bad outcomes increase exponentially as the opponent, the fire, finds ways to exploit the department's shortcomings. The strategy. Some organizations may be able to survive a reduction in resources by focusing on reducing non-core services. During abundant times, when organizations' budgets and staffing were growing, some departments sought opportunities to start new programs and services, and perhaps in the process created some new staff positions. Some of those programs and services may not be directly tied to the core mission of the department. Now, as times become lean, organizations may be forced to determine if there are any non-core programs and services that can be shed, perhaps only temporarily. Applied to the baseball analogy, this might be the equivalent of making reductions in concessions. The first task may be to figure out what the core services are and try to preserve those. But who gets to make those decisions? This question can raise a host of potential challenges as cities contemplate their priorities. Is planting flowers in the parks more important than a fast paramedic response? Is snow removal on park pathways more important than having police officers on patrol? Unfortunately, in some cities, flower planting and pathway cleaning are higher priorities than public safety. The debate on the fairness of this disparity can rage on, but the reality is you have a limited impact on the decision-making of elected officials. Department leaders should try to engage city management and elected officials on this topic. Doing so may result in limited success, however. Some elected officials and politically minded city managers may balk at the notion of having to prioritize the city's services. For some, such a task may be the equivalent of asking a parent to identify which of their children they like the most. They're going to be reluctant to reveal the answers and divulge which programs are their favorites, with emphasis on favorites versus priorities. While it may not come as news, it's important to acknowledge that some elected officials and politically minded city managers are single-minded. For the electeds, they're focused on doing the things that will ensure they remain popular enough to get reelected. For some city managers, their focus may be on doing things that will ensure they remain popular enough with the elected officials to stay employed as the city manager. It would not be fair to lump all elected officials and all city managers into the category of being narrowly focused on their popularity, so long as it's acknowledged that such persons do exist, and they may be the very people who you are trying to get to prioritize the city's services. There can be some risk in engaging elected officials in the discussion of priorities. If they're focused on maintaining their popularity, the programs that are most popular in the community, not necessarily the ones that are the most essential, may arise to the top of their list. Recently, a group of elected officials threw their support behind building a new library while withholding the support for a levy to build a new fire station, even though the fire station was reportedly in much worse condition. Why would this happen? From the standpoint of supporting popular funding options versus essential ones, many more voters are going to use the library each year than are going to use the services of the fire department. It's always wise to engage your elected officials in these important discussions as they represent the citizens. Just remember the potential risk and do your best to educate them on the potential impacts. Alternatively, the task of determining the core services to be maintained in each department of the city might be left to the professional staff, who possess a better understanding of the impacts based on an established standard of service and the safety to personnel versus politics and popularity. By whatever means it is established, the department should make a list of non-core services that could be shed and prioritize that list based on public and firefighter safety. For example, if the department hosts birthday parties, while nice, shedding this program will have a comparatively low impact on public and firefighter safety. Such programs can be hard to give up, though, especially when they have been ongoing programs whose success is based on the hard work and dedication of loyal members. Deciding which non-core programs or services to discontinue may be the baseball equivalent of having to decide whether to close the concession stand or souvenir vendors. Both are popular, but something has to be cut, and the status quo is not an option. After all the non-core services have been identified and cuts have been implemented, the next task is to determine if the core services can be maintained at the same level with the remaining resources. Strategically, this task addresses how to make cuts while preserving safety. If the next rounds of cuts involves reducing the very resources that provide core services, then the service delivery model must change as well. This can be an emotionally charged decision. Anytime a fire department has to reduce its core services, the loss can hurt deeply. A loss of this magnitude can also result in members going through a grieving process that entails 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Many fire departments have experienced reductions that impact core services, including staffing reductions that result in less frontline personnel providing services, which impacts safety. The cuts have been tangible, and department members are grieving. Some are in denial, others are angry, a few are trying to bargain their way out of their situation, and some are even depressed. What there seems to have been far less of, at least to this point, is acceptance of the losses, a curtailment of the anger and the bargaining and depression, and an acceptance of the loss. Perhaps members are still working their way through the grieving process. Experts have not agreed on a prescribed schedule as to how long a person should spend in each step of the grieving process, though it's generally accepted among mental health professionals that extended periods of time in any step leading to acceptance can have unhealthy consequences. The losses many departments have experienced are not going to be restored. As department members work through the grieving process and get to acceptance, they can begin determining how to adjust to the current situation, their new normal. This will be a watershed moment for the department and the starting point for a meaningful discussion about how service delivery should change as a result of the new paradigm. As core services are cut, the mantra of do more with less is not possible. When the cuts are deep, the only possible outcome is do less with less. If reductions mean having one less truck company on the street, having to close or brown out a station, or reducing the number of firefighters on a company, there's going to be a corresponding reduction in service. Back to the baseball analogy. A team with 8 members on the field cannot play the same game the same way as when they had 9. While firefighters can be shifted and their roles shared, there needs to be a strategic decision made for how to avoid overextending firefighters, how to avoid taking dangerous shortcuts, and how to manage increase in the risk. A discussion among operational staff about how to accomplish this is essential. The expectations of members must be adjusted, and there should be a healthy dialogue that results in an understanding among operational personnel about what the new expectations are and how they impact street performance, the customer, and firefighter safety. Expect this to be a difficult discussion. No firefighter worth the boots he or she wears is going to want to cut street-level service to the customer, but all the pride or denial in the world isn't going to put 9 players back on the field when the team has been cut to 8. Your fire department did not create the economic issues you are facing, and therefore should not feel guilty about managing the impacts in a way that ensures firefighter safety. If responses to emergencies are going to be slower or entail using less firefighters, there's going to be an operational impact. Discussing the impacts and the concerns openly and gaining agreement on what the new expectations should be is an excellent step toward reducing overextension, shortcutting, and excessive risk-taking. As your organization engages in these discussions, it might be worthwhile to work through some scenarios. One example might be a residential dwelling fire scenario using the resources the department enjoyed when the times were good. In other words, the pre-reduction staffing. Chart out how long it would take for each company to arrive, how many there were on each company, and what each company would do, and how long it would take to perform each task, and what the result of the company's efforts were. Then do the same scenario over again, applying the resource levels of the new paradigm. Realistically, the scenario should change, and depending on the degree of reductions your organization has sustained, it may change significantly. Staffing levels and response times are two key factors likely to change. As response times increase, so will the pre-arrival fire progression, and the risk profile of savable lives, and the stability of the structure. These changes affect everything, or at least they should. Resource reduction changes the rules of the game, and your beloved fire service is facing a whole new ballgame. It's vitally important for the safety of our members to accept our new paradigm and discuss how significant reductions in resources can impact street-level performance and make the changes necessary to protect the safety of our firefighters.
Okay, now it's time for a firefighter near-miss report offered by the Firefighter Near-Miss Reporting System, this one dated December 10th, 2014, titled Firefighter Operating Alone and Standing in Heavy Fire Conditions. Here's the narrative. Our fire company responded mutual aid for a reported structure fire involving a single-family dwelling in a neighboring district. The occupants had exited the building and were accounted for upon the arrival of the first officer. On arrival, the engine in which I was riding had to pass in front of the building, and I commented to the crew on board that we would not be conducting interior operations due to the amount of fire throughout the building. I reported to the IC and my crew of five that my crew of five was given an assignment to stretch a 2.5-inch line to the rear of the building, the seaside, and apply water to the area of the rear deck and kitchen. The host fire department was in the process of stretching hand lines in the front of the building and applying water through the opening in the garage on the D side and the area of the front door on the A side. At this point, a water supply with tankers was being established, but all attack lines were still being operated on booster tank water. A RIT team was also en route from two neighboring departments. While working with my crew in the rear of the building, I looked up into the kitchen area through the double sliding doors that opened onto the rear deck. There, in the middle of the fully involved kitchen area, was a single firefighter from the host department in full PPE, standing fully upright with flames above him at the ceiling level and behind him in the kitchen cabinets. He then called out to my crew, wanting to use the 2.5-inch hand line we were operating. He indicated that he could hit the fire from his position. When the disbelief wore off in a few seconds, I immediately ordered the firefighter to leave the building. He balked at first, claiming again that he could make a difference by applying water from his position in the fully involved kitchen. At this point, I even more forcefully ordered him from the building. He then exited the building via the front door opposite our position. I then transferred command of my crew to a lieutenant on the crew and went in search of the IC to report the episode to him. Lessons learned. Risk versus benefit. Decision making. The single firefighter freelancing in a well-involved building was not going to make a difference in saving any remaining property in the building, let alone the building which was 75% involved upon arrival of the first units. The occupants were accounted for long before the firefighter entered the building. Accountability. The firefighter was operating alone without the safety of a partner or a crew with him. Situational awareness. Individual action. The firefighter was operating in a well-involved kitchen area with fire over his head, involving the wood-framed attic space, without the protection of a hose line. The roof structure could have collapsed at any time while he was operating inside the building. If you want to read this one and other near-miss reports, you can visit the Firefighter Near-Miss Reporting System at www.firefighternearmiss.com. If you have experienced or witnessed a near-miss and would like to be interviewed on this show, visit samatters.com. Click on the Contact Us link and I'll reach out to you. Thank you in advance for sharing your lessons learned so that others may live. Well, that's it. Episode 34 is complete. Thank you for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. If you like the show, please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and search for SA Matters Radio. And subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback. If you like the show, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give it a 5-star review as well. Not only will that motivate me to work harder for you, it also helps others find the show. If you've been inspired and want to learn more about situational awareness, consider becoming a member of the SA Matters community. It's free, and when you sign up, you'll receive that special report I mentioned earlier called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. To claim your free gift, head over to samatters.com and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.